remains today, I believe. Stuart is the first generation nephew of the gentleman that this story is all about. And boy, oh boy, you talk about 6 degrees of separation. To have Stuart in this audience is profoundly important to me. And where I got that, a lot of my tips, I don't mind plagiarizing, by the way, it's just not at all below me. But I plagiarized this. And this came from a gentleman who is one of the king pins of aerospace business. Absolutely one of the king pins. I went to a training for leadership development at Wallops Island, Virginia, back in the mid-'80s. And this man was our guest speaker. He was the director of engineering at the Johnson Space Center. And he told us this story where he talked about ships in harbor are safe, but that's not what ships are made for. And the idea was, it was right on the heels of losing the Apollo 1 fire. By the way, the gentleman's name was Aaron Cohen. Aaron left Wallops Island as my instructor for a group of about 40 that day, flew back to Houston, and the next week, Aaron was notified and the world became aware that Aaron Cohen would be the next director of the Johnson Space Center, where he served nobly for many years before he passed away. I learned just passed away in the last several years. But here's what Aaron taught me, and that is ships in harbor are safe, but that's not what ships are made for. The idea stood behind the Apollo 1 fire. And what Aaron witnessed was that after we had that fire, people did not want to get out of their comfort zone and go fly again because it was tragic. The loss of Apollo 1 was tragic. It was burned in the minds and hearts of these people that had to experience it for many, many years. And Aaron explained that as they would go to flight readiness reviews to get ready for the next flight, people would always say, wait a minute, I'm not ready. What if? What if we did it again? We can't tolerate that. And so they would not want to go out there and face the rough waters. And that's when Aaron explained to them that ships in harbor are safe, but that's not what they're made for. Sometimes you have to make yourself get out of the calm of a harbor and go out there in the rough seas to accomplish your mission. And he described a picture over his desk in his office of a ship out in rough water. And it had that caption. And I'm proud to tell you that was in a November time frame. I went home and told my family about that experience because it was burned indelibly in my mind. And for Christmas, a month later, my wife and children gave me a picture that you're about to see. But again, it's about the Apollo 1 fire. Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White standing in front of Launch Complex 34 where they met their demise. And you might be interested to know that every year on the 28th of January, the anniversary of that loss, Mrs. Grissom will have, and sometimes the other families, but primarily the Grissom family, will have a memorial service down on the ground level of that launch pad. And for 3 years I had the pleasure of being a participant, and to see them continue to remember their lost heroes is quite impressive. As hard as this is to look at, this is what the inside looked like of that fire. They learned 2 things. You don't have a 100% oxygen environment when you're sitting in a vehicle entrapped. Crazy that ever happened. I can't begin to explain it, but that's what allowed the fire to get started with the spark of an electrical component. The other thing they learned is, even though the crew probably could not have gotten out because the fire went up so instantly, the inside of that Apollo module did not have a latch on the inside that would allow them to unlatch it, open the hatch, and climb out. So they were committed to stay there, and I was still in high school at this time, or actually, yeah, I was in my last year of high school. People that were there at the blockhouse watching this on video say it was the most horrifying thing they ever had to watch, to see their friends experience their death in this vehicle. So there's the picture I was telling you that came about because of the story that Aaron Cohen told us. So it's a good example of how you share your experiences with people, and it can just have a lasting effect. And if you ever come to my house, and you are welcome to come to my house, you'll see that picture hanging on the wall. So, to show you that they did get beyond this fear of flying, the next crew that flew was the Apollo 7 crew that launched on Apollo 11. You may recognize Wally Schirra, who was one of the